we have a response video to my video, and this response video is made by the channel Owning Dishonest Shills. They have titled their video Dishonest Shill Number 1, Debunking Tick on Hitler and Socialism. We're going to learn why I'm a dishonest shill, and we're also going to learn why Hitler definitely wasn't a socialist. So I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be fantastic.
Hitler's socialism destroying the denialist counter-arguments.
Yes.
Now, go ahead, ODS.
There's no denialism going on. That's just a false label. So
yes.
Pointing out the obvious is not denial, Tilk.
Exactly.
Yes.
So let's start this up, and we'll see what this guy...
I just want to explain who Tilk is. I want to give a bit of context to who
Oh, yes,
Tilk
of course.
is. So Tilk is a history YouTuber, and he's done some good videos on battles, like World War II battles. But the problem is he's leaving his area of expertise, and he's talking about politics, and he's completely clueless, or he's dishonest. It's one of the two, unfortunately, and I'm going to prove why he's dishonest in this reply video. Now, he did a 5-hour video on this. He did a big splurge on this video, and he's done other videos. He did an hour-and-a-half video explaining the definition of socialism versus capitalism, which is a load of junk, right, using false definitions. Then he did this 5-hour video right here. So he does long-winded videos explaining his position, but they're just trash. And what his fans will go, they'll go, aha, you haven't watched the entire video. So it's just designed to waste your time. And I'm going to prove it. And this video, you're only going to need to watch 15 minutes of it to know that the rest of the video is trash. And I'm going to explain why. Hitler got backing from the capitalists, right? Corporations, right? And he promised them that he would have no socialist policies in place when he was lobbying to them, and he kept his promise.
Yes.
So the claim that he's socialist is just complete bunk.
It is. Matter of fact, I just watched a 2-minute video where the man just explained that Hitler did not allow unions. If you're a socialist, you'd be for unions, and he was for the small business owner.
And also Hitler did privatization as well.
He actually nationalised the unions into the DAF, the Deutsches Arbeitersfront, the German Labour Front, and then crushed the trade unions that refused to nationalise. So that's not the same as he just didn't like trade unions. No, he liked nationalised, socialised trade unions. The Germans themselves, or the Nazis themselves, used the word Gleichschaltung, synchronisation, as in synchronisation in with the state. They also use the word Zwangswirtschaft, I think it is, which is compulsory economy. And the reason why is because the SA and the other members of the Nazi Party walked into the industries and the factories and the businesses and took them over from within. That's why Professor Junkers of the airplane factory, he was thrown out of his factory in 1934, and he was the first person to be thrown out of his factory. The Nazis themselves were taking people out of the industries and replacing them with people who were either loyal to the Nazi Party or were actual Nazi Party members. And as I say, this is well documented. So the idea that they privatized the industries doesn't make any sense, because they didn't. It was the absolute opposite. And you can read this in The Vampire Economy. The businessmen and the industrial leaders were under the thumb of the Nazi Party, and they were complaining that they didn't have any freedom at all to operate. And really, in a lot of cases, those businesses weren't their own businesses anymore because they had been expropriated. It's just they were basically figureheads in their own industries. Now, there were exceptions because some of the industrialists had already joined the Nazi Party, so they were already kind of given freedom because they were part of the Nazi Party. Where this idea that they privatized the industries comes from, I'm not sure, because the sources referring to the Nazis themselves don't say that. Now, the enemies of the Nazis, the Marxists, they might say privatization, but the Nazis themselves did not say that, and the Nazis themselves, even if they did say that, the evidence is quite clear that's not what actually happened. And that's why people who actually did watch the video were like, oh wow, I didn't realize this, I didn't know this.
It's safe to say that neither you or I are socialist.
No, the thing is, it depends what you mean by socialism.
Well, what I mean is
I'm-
what they're talking about, saying you're a socialist. I mean, I believe that society works well with a combination of capitalism and socialism. Socialism does definitely helps, but the point is, we're not coming to this guy as I am a socialist. We're not card carrying
Yeah.
socialist, right?
Well, the thing is, the problem is, especially with someone like Tilk, he'll call government regulation and intervention socialism. That's not the definition of socialism, right? And let me give an analogy to make this clear. Let's talk about the Roman Empire, right?
Yeah.
The Roman Empire, they used to give out bread. They called it the dole. They used to feed the masses because there was like, basically what happened in Rome, it used to be a farming society, but Rome started conquering other nations and they started getting slaves. And the slaves replaced the worker farmers, the free citizen farmers, and they couldn't feed themselves. The Roman Empire gave them bread to stop them rioting and causing social chaos. They didn't give them bread because they were socialists. They didn't want to eliminate class differences or reduce them. For something to be socialist, it has to have an egalitarian aim, in my opinion.
Imagine a small tribe in Africa or, South America or whatever, and let's just say they've got 10 huts in this tribe, okay? And each hut has either got an individual living in it or a small family, okay? Each individual hut would be classed as a private abode. And the reason why is because it's private, Latin meaning individual, or going back even further than that, it actually used to mean small family-like group, as I explained in the public versus private video. So each individual hut, or each private hut, is the private sector. But the tribe as a whole, all 10 of the huts, that tribe, we call it a tribe, the society as a whole, right, the group as a whole, is classed as the state, the tribal state. If you had it bigger, it would be a city-state. If you had it even bigger again, it would be a nation-state. But the society itself is the state. So the definition of a state, look it up in the dictionary, is a politically organized community with a piece of territory. So the tribe, or the city-state, or the nation, or the internation, all right, obviously that's a bit of a joke, but the international community, if it's community, if it's a commune, if it's a group, if it's a bunch of workers, if it's a bunch of tribe men, whatever it is, whatever group that is, if that's a politically organized community, so if it's a tribe or a state or a union or whatever it is, that would be classed as a state. So society is the state. Socialism is nationalism. Nationalism is socialism, because a nation is a society, and a society is a nation or tribe, whatever. So the definition of socialism comes from that, because it's social group, meaning the state. So now the technical definition of socialism is the social ownership of the means of production. What that means is the social group, the tribe, the state, the city-state, whatever you want to call it, is in command or control of the means of production. So basically the industries or the businesses. That didn't happen in the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire may have redistributed bread from North Africa to Rome to feed the plebs, but they didn't own the means of production. Neither would I class it as capitalism, because as you rightly point out, it's a farming community. Which is interesting. You say yourself that the definition of capitalism is the state doing stuff. If that is the case, then surely by your own argument, if capitalism is the state doing stuff, then that would mean that the Romans were doing stuff, and therefore Rome itself was capitalist, which it clearly wasn't. So, and this goes back to what you said just before. You were like, well, it depends on your definition of socialism. Well, why don't you know the definition of socialism? You're saying, okay, Hitler's not a socialist, but yet you can't even define it, and you think capitalism is when the state does stuff, even though it's not. It's the private ownership of the means of production. Private meaning individual or small family-like group in ownership. So it's each individual hut in the tribe. It's each, that's why we call the corner shop, where mum and pop shop, we call that the private sector. We call it that because it's the small family-like group or the individual in control. A worker who owns his own tools is a private capitalist because he also earns money doing that. Whereas the workers' group in control, so like a trade union or a syndicate, that's why we have syndicalism on the left, the syndicate in control, the workers' group as a group in control of the means of production, or workers plural, that's why that is socialism, whereas one individual worker owning the means of production is capitalism. If it's done for money and you've not got slavery or serfdom or something. So that's why. But I like the fact that you can't define this, and you're not the only guys who can't define this, and yet you're able to dismiss the whole of the argument, based on this, which is kind of crazy, really.
I have not set myself on the road of politics in order to pave the way for an international socialism. I bring the German people a national socialism, the political theory of the national community, the feeling of unity for all who belong to the German nation and who are prepared and willing to feel themselves as being an inseparable but also co-responsible particle of the totality of the nation.
Sorry,
so-
that didn't really mean anything to me.
Yes.
He's not for international socialism. He wants to bring the German people together equally, right? The national community, the Volksgemeinschaft, the bringing of the people together, the feeling of unity of all who belong to the German nation or society, right? So this is the egalitarian part of it. Just like with Marxist socialism wants to bring the workers together at the expense of the farmers and the bourgeoisie, because bearing in mind, no, they weren't. They were for the workers, the proletariat, the people who live in towns who were the workers, which is why they starved the farmers as well as the bourgeoisie. Marxism is an equal society for the workers or the proletariat specifically. Hitler's National Socialism was egalitarian for the Germans, for the German people, at the exclusion of others. Just like Marxism is excluding non-proletariat, Hitler was excluding non-Germans. That's the egalitarianism in it.
Just because Hitler says something doesn't mean it's true, right? Tilk. So, Hitler had a tendency to tell bare-faced lies.
Yes, Hitler does lie, but he wasn't lying there. When he said, we're going to create a racial community, a Volksgemeinschaft, I think he did do that. So it's okay saying Hitler lies. Yeah, he does. But he's not lying when he said that.
He's got a massive right-wing fan base who support him, and he's appealing and pandering to them. They're far more lucrative than the Marxist or left-wing fan base that he used to have. He drove his left-wing fan base away, right? So, yeah. Because he did do some good, like, for example, he did some very good videos on the Eastern Front. So it was a shock when he went full retard, is another way of putting it. And he started saying this stupid crap.
I didn't want to drive my left-wing audience away. I still don't. There's many people who are left-wing who watch this who are like, I don't agree with your economics and politics take, but I like your military history, so I'm sticking to tanks. I disagree with them. I think they, again, just like you guys, I don't think you even understand my argument.
This guy probably did say neck yourself, but what it is, he's showing just guys shouting at him. He's not really showing any real arguments. And that's, if there are real arguments, he'd have to knock those down. This isn't an argument at all. He's just saying...
He's playing victim. He's playing victim, that's what he's doing. Yeah, he's a threat narrative. Oh, look, I'm getting attacked. He's trying to imply, I'm getting attacked, therefore I must be right.
Oh, is there any point in looking at these? It's
not...
I can't read it. Showing up very, very well on the screen. I've got it maxed out here.
Okay, let's just skip it then.
Okay.
I do like the fact, though, that, you complain, oh, he's not going to show the counter-arguments. I am showing the counter-arguments.
You throwing out a stupid idea, Till, you're free to do that, as long as you don't incite violence against a group of people or promote hate. You're free to do that. But if you're pro-free speech, you can't label the pushback and the insults as anti-free speech. If you're pro-free speech, right? You're going to have to you're going to have to take the pushback and you're going to get insulted because Tilk, I'm sure you're a nice person in your life. Deep down, you're a nice guy, but you're acting like an idiot. You're acting like an idiot, so you're going to get mocked. I'm afraid it's just the way it's going to go down, and you're bringing it on yourself. You're either dishonest, or if you're honest, you're so politically obsessed with your political ideals. It's just poisoning your thinking.
No, the point of me calling him out is that this is meant to be an intellectual debate, and insulting people back and forth is not an intellectual debate. And yeah, they're free to do it, but what's the point?
National socialism is national socialism argument is superior to the national socialism is capitalism argument. But many aren't.
Yeah, but who said that? Yeah, where's the screenshot? Yeah.
So,
Yeah, exactly.
so where's right on the screen now is a screenshot from the Finnish Socialist. Nazi Germany was a totalitarian state capitalist system. There it is, right in black and white. And where does it say that? There you go. Also, notice on the screen as well, the Finnish Socialist also defines what socialism is. And he defines it exactly the same way that I do. And he also defines capitalism the exact same way that I do. And he even says this is not only from a Marxist point of view either. Yeah, it's not. From a capitalist point of view, these are the definitions. There you go. I am agreeing with the Finnish Socialist on the definitions of capitalism and socialism. I'm not agreeing with him when he says that it's a totalitarian state capitalist system. If it's totalitarian in state, it's therefore not capitalist, because capitalism is the private ownership of the means of production. This is where the problem lies, because they don't understand what private ownership actually means.
The thing is, the Nazis were capitalists. Hitler himself. You can look up the Wikipedia on the article on Nazi economics. Hitler himself, I'm paraphrasing, but he did say basically, free market capitalism is the superior economic system because it brings out the creativity of the Aryan race.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the Nazis were social Darwinists, so anti-egalitarianism as well. That's why they can't actually be socialists.
One, don't use Wikipedia. It's not a source. It can be written by anybody who's got any political agenda or any sort of bias. Even with the Battle of Stalingrad, Wikipedia gets the start date for the Battle of Stalingrad incorrect. It says it's like the 23rd or 24th of August. Wrong. It was either July, late July, or it was mid-September when the city fight began. Secondly, you've just said that nobody's saying that the Nazis were capitalists, and there's no evidence of that, which on the screen is a quote from a Finnish socialist saying, yeah, they were capitalist. So one guy says that, then the very next person says, oh no, it actually was capitalist. So you're is it capitalist or is it not capitalist? Because one of you and the Finnish socialists think it is, and the other guy doesn't think it is. 3, you talk about the social Darwinism side. I also mentioned that it was a massive part of the video in question. If you go to the timestamps that are available in the video description of the Hitler Socialism video, which you don't seem to have realised, there's an entire section 4, which is prior to the privatisation section, which is where I really dive deep. But that section 4, I actually go into the Nazi ideology and I talk about this problem with the social Darwinism thing, because you're correct, it does actually undermine Hitler's ideology. That's why there's a section in it called National Socialism's Fundamental Ideological Flaw, because what Hitler tried to do, I'm saying this in a nutshell, go and see that part of the video to understand, but what Hitler's tried to do, he had this socialism and then he had this social Darwinism thing, which is about individuals, and he tried to latch that onto the side of this socialist ideology, and it doesn't work, which is why I've disproven how National Socialism ideology even works. That's why I called it National Socialism's Fundamental Ideological Flaw. I've explained this. It's in the video. You haven't watched it. This is why people are telling you need to watch the video, because your counter arguments are poor because they've already been refuted. You're trying to explain to me the arguments that I've already gone through. Do you want to know? Here's the big secret, guys. And I know you two know exactly who I'm going to refer to, because you've even done a video on him. This video, this Hitler's Socialism video, the part of the reason why the first section was so long, and I went into the things like Labour Theory of Value and all that, is because this was a response video. Do you want to know who I was responding to? The Finnish Bolshevik. He made a video about my original National Socialism videos, and this Hitler Socialism video, not entirely, because there was other people as well, obviously there was other commenters, there was people on Reddit that I was responding to, Bad History, r/Bad History on Reddit, let's not even go there. That was part of the reason why I went into the Marxist stuff and was referring to them as Marxists. It wasn't entirely him, and it wasn't entirely structured around his points, but he laid, let's say, a good 60% of the video out for me, because I was just like, right, I'll just go for each one of his points in turn. This video is the counter-argument to the counter-arguments that were made before, and I explained, hey, somebody said this, meaning this Marxist guy over here, this Finnish Bolshevik, Finnish National Socialist, right? I'm responding to him. That's why the video is structured the way it is. So some Marxist guy has said this, here's the refutation, here's me explaining, here's the evidence, destroying that. That's why it's called destroying the denialist counter-arguments, because they are denying history. That's the whole point. Finnish Bolshevik has already given the same arguments you've given here. Finnish Socialist on the screen right now says they did mass privatization programs. No, they didn't. I've been over this earlier in this video. I've been over it in the Hitler Socialism video. Been over it in videos before this. They even abolished private property. Yes, they did. Go and look it. It's in the video. The beginning of the privatization section, I explain what they did. They abolished private property in the Reichstag Fire Decree of 1933. There's 2 articles that they got rid of from the Weimar Constitution, and they went, nope. And that's why they were allowed to expropriate, aka seize, the businesses and the industries in question. And the Finnish Socialist even says unions were abolished. The DAF wasn't, the Deutsches Arbeitersfront, the German Labour Front, and the workers had to succumb to the state. Yes, just like what Lenin did. And that's another point I brought up in the video. Lenin did exactly the same thing that Hitler did, but when Lenin does it, oh no, that's socialism. But when Hitler does it, no, that's capitalism.
Socialism has been defined as social ownership of the means of production, and as opposed to the private ownership of the means of production. This is not only from a Marxist point of view either. Why Nazi Germany wasn't socialist is fairly obvious. They did amass privatization programs. Hell, even the word privatization was invented because of them. And Hitler's quote from 1500 onward shows that he most certainly was not a socialist. So that kind of makes sense. Okay.
Yes, the thing is, for a policy to be socialist, it's got to have an egalitarian aim, in my opinion. It's got to at least be aiming towards a society where more people own the means of production, like more worker communes. The minimum definition of a socialist policy has got to be one of an egalitarian aim to reduce class differences, to reduce income differences. That's the absolute minimum. And
yeah, so Hitler was doing that, but instead of for the class, he was doing it for the race. So he was trying to egalitarianize the German race to get over the class differences. And he lays this all out. He explains all this. Mein Kampf, his second book, other sources, his speeches, his table talks. We got a host of other sources saying it, not just Hitler himself, but other, either observers of the Nazis themselves. There's a whole swath of sources explaining this, but you don't know this.
Okay, right now, he should be looking at this that I just read out and debunking it. That's it.
Yes.
Right. That's what I do in the video. I've just done it now again.
Most of my critics don't actually watch the videos anyway. They watch 2 minutes.
Hold it. Within the first minute of watching this, I know you guys can't see it, so I'm going to read it out. Within the first minute of watching this video, I quickly became aware that the content creator has no idea what he's talking about. So, I mean, that is actually, there's nothing wrong with what he said there, because in other words, he's saying, I noticed a error right off the bat.
Yes.
People aren't listening. The massive problem I have is I can't explain in 2 seconds or a minute the whole of Hitler's ideology, the definitions of socialism and capitalism as they are historically, and then explain how Hitler abolished private property, nationalized the industries, nationalized the trade unions. I can't explain all that in a minute. I can't explain it in 10 minutes. It's too much. I can't do it. So I had to make a video that explained it in as much detail as possible so that you can just watch it like, oh, okay, yeah, got you now.
I can't endure this bullshit anymore. 3-hour response video incoming.
I'll tell you what. I'll look that video up later and I'll actually watch it, see what his reply's like.
Okay.
Might be worth, if he's done a reply video, it might be worth watching.
Okay. Oh, do you take the other guy just says you deserve every unsub? That's not
Yeah.
really, that's not vicious though.
Yeah, but the reason why is because I wasn't putting vicious comment. That 80s Wolf guy, oh, I've got screenshots. The guy is an absolute... I mean, that was the only comment that I could find that didn't have like swear words in every other word. It was literally... he was firing thousands of comments. And this is another thing as well. There's several people who have not watched the video at all, but are willing to spend days, hours, weeks, months of their lives in the comments of the Hitler Socialism video telling me how wrong I am and telling all the people who agree with me how bad they are. And everyone's replying to them saying, just watch the video. Watch the video and you will see how wrong you are. No, I haven't got time to watch a 5-hour video. Really, you'll spend hours, months, days, weeks, years of your lives in the comment section telling everybody how wrong you are and you haven't even watched the video. It's ridiculous. You have got the time, but you won't do it. I even provided a PDF for this video. Never done that before, never done it since. For the Hitler Socialism video, in the description, again, there's timestamps and then there is a link to a PDF. And now the problem with the PDF is that it's not color coordinated like the video actually is. I actually color coordinate the words in the video itself. So the video is actually superior to the PDF, and I explain this in the preface to the PDF. So you can see there, orange is racial or national socialism, pink is socialism, green is fascism, blue is capitalism, red is Marxism. I wasn't able to put that in the PDF. It's color coordinated so that you can see as the video progresses, okay, that's what took me, like I've done everything I could. It took me days to do that. I did everything I could to try and make this video as accessible as possible.
In the hope that some of these people will actually listen to me and actually try to understand what I'm saying. Even if you do not agree with what I'm about to say, there's no reason to call me names, slander me, jump to false conclusions, or say me.
We can say
you're
being stupid.
Yes, it's irrelevant. Let me give you this analogy. If I go 1 + 1 = 2, it's valid. If I go 1 + 1 = 2, you stupid moron, it's still valid.
And if I say 2 + 2 is 4, and you go, no, you're wrong, you're an idiot, you don't know what the definition of 2 is. Okay, here's the video explaining what 2... Oh, you're just making up the definitions. Then what? Right? Then what? And then how do I get across to you? Actually, no, I'm correct. Here's my workings out. The 99% of the criticism I'm getting is, you're wrong, you're an idiot, here's a bunch of swear words. It's like, what's that? I will not insult you guys here. I'm not doing that. You're insulting me all you want. I'm not insulting you. Right? I'm not saying, no, you're an idiot. I'm not doing that, because that's not the point here. The point is to get to the truth. The point is to have that debate, the intellectually honest debate. You're not engaging in that, and I'm calling you out on it, and you're saying, well, yeah, no, they're right. No, they're not right. They need to be responding to my argument properly, and they're not. That's the whole point.
Okay, it's good to have a debate, right? But there's some positions that are so moronic, if the person holds them, you're just going to move on because it's a waste of time. And as the person's moving on, they're going to say, what an idiot, or what a lunatic. If you think Hitler was a socialist, contrary to all the evidence, people are going to mock you.
It's not contrary to the evidence. That's the point. It's not. The evidence is overwhelming. That's why I was able to make a 5-hour video with 107 sources, 350... How many times do I have to say it? How many times do I have to say it? You're wrong. The evidence is overwhelming. Junkers was thrown out of his factory. Please refute that, please. Like, how is expropriation of property, Jewish property, how is that not, the social ownership, the German social ownership of the means of production? Please explain that to me, and I will happily sit here and go, okay, and then we'll have a debate back and forth. That's what I'm looking for. The evidence is overwhelming on my side. I'm waiting for somebody to say, no, actually, I've got a counter argument. Good, fantastic. And maybe there are counter arguments out there, but I can't see it because there's that many people just spouting nonsense in the comment sections of my videos about how wrong I am and I'm stupid, blah, 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 and that's it. And it's like, stop doing that. Please give me an intellectually honest, counter-argument. Please, I'm begging you, please do it.
My argument is that National Socialism was real National Socialism, and that it was a left-wing socialist ideology.
Yes.
So National Socialism was real National Socialism. What? Okay.
Nation is a society is a nation. So nationalism is socialism. Oh, no, internationalism is social. One nation under God is still a nation. And this is the problem, you see. You don't understand the words. There's no difference between the socialization of the means of production and the nationalization of the means of production. There is no a nation is a society. It's one and the same thing. So if we're trying to prove it's socialism, we just need to prove it's nationalism. It's the same thing.
Hitler might have hated Jewish capitalism, but he didn't hate capitalism.
Exactly.
Okay? And Hitler's main obsession was with the Bolsheviks, the communists.
So if Hitler doesn't like Jews, and that's why he doesn't like Jewish capitalism, but he's happy with capitalism, then why could the same not apply to the Bolshevik side? Oh, actually, he doesn't mind socialism, he just doesn't like Jewish socialism, which he calls Jewish Bolshevism, which is exactly what he said in Mein Kampf. It's not the case that Hitler likes capitalism but doesn't like Jewish capitalism. It's a case of he thinks capitalism is Jewish, and he thinks that capitalism is leading to Marxism, because it's a Jewish plot. It's all in and of the same sort of thing. So what Hitler was doing was he's like, right, we need to stop this so-called Jewish plot by advancing east, taking the land and resources of the East, setting up a socialist state, using because his argument was the Germans couldn't create a socialist state without the land and resources of the East. So they were going east to set up the socialist state, but they needed to take out the Jewish capitalists and the Jewish Bolsheviks at the same time. He did not like the idea of the Marxist version of socialism because he thought it was a Jewish plot.
And his pro-German racism is his socialism. He thought...
No.
Causing what?
What has racism got to do with socialism? I don't get this.
It doesn't.
Yes, it's a non sequitur, Till.
Yeah.
The social group in control of the means of production, social ownership in the means of production, that's what socialism is. The German race is a social group, according to Hitler. That's the point. It's not class socialism, it's a racial socialism.
There's many right-wing racists right now who believe in this stuff, and they're not socialists, right? Many of them are right-wing free market nut jobs who believe in exactly the same thing as Hitler's saying here. They're not socialists in any sense of the word.
So to believe in freedom is a nut job. A National Socialist is not some guy sitting in prison with a swastika on his forehead, right? Maybe the grunts of the National Socialist movement are like that, but the actual National Socialist intellectuals are not like that at all. And the question is, where have these intellectuals gone? And the answer is, they're in with the left, which is why the left are so eager to call everyone else a Nazi, because they don't want you to realise, oh, actually, they're full of Nazis themselves. That's why they're calling for socialistic nationalism, and they were talking about race all the time. Why are supposed non-racists talking about race? Which is why the left are moving in that direction. That's why Jeremy Corbyn was an anti-Semite, or is an anti-Semite. That's why the Labour Party's full of anti-Semites, and he's done nothing about it. It's like, why are they full of anti-Semites? I thought they were the left-wing party.
Since he's not a complete lunatic, I'll give him credit on that. He knows the Holocaust is a bad thing. He knows it's evil. He doesn't deny it exists. So he wants to lump the Nazis as socialists so he can link the Holocaust to socialism and dirty the label socialism with something that socialists actually never caused.
Yes, of course.
That's his real motive, yes.
The Holocaust wasn't created by free markets. The Holocaust was centrally planned. We had the Wannsee Conference. We have, other institutions of the Nazi state participating in this. It was the Nazi government itself that did it. It wasn't the corner shop. It's like, hey, we're selling Holocaust today. Like that didn't happen. It was centrally planned. It was organized. It was done socially, centrally, publicly. It was done that way. It wasn't done through the power of exchanging back and forth. The market didn't do it. The means of production, or the means of destruction in this case, was owned by the state. It was owned by the social group, the Germans. It was socialism. If everybody's free and free to do what they wish in a free market and they were exchanging money back and forth, then how exactly does Holocaust happen? Like, if it was capitalism, it's really hard to say that it would. It's only if it's socialism and centrally socially planned that it actually would. That's my point here.
As I will show later, socialism is state control of the economy. Marxism is a
State control.
version of the...
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, he just said that socialism state control of the economy. Wrong. Okay, every state control of the economy is not a binary, it's a spectrum. Okay, different economic systems and societies have had state control of the economy on some level or another, as long as there's been a state. So, for example, currency in of itself is state controlled. It's made by the state. They create currency. Property rights.
Really? So you're saying that the state creates fiat currency? So what you're saying is we have centralized fiat control of the means of... Oh, so we're not living in a capitalist society. Since we do not have money, we have currency. Oh, that's interesting.
That's state controlled. The concept of property is an intersubjective concept.
It's actually the individual who defines the property. I don't require a state for me to go, this is mine. You can't have it. This is mine. Like, it doesn't require law to say that. It takes a law to take this away from me. If you own your house in Britain or if you own a house in the United States, I'm sorry, you don't actually own it because you have to pay rent to the state. The state owns it and you have to pay them property tax, which is rent, because they actually own it here in the UK. So my friend's trying to create a business because, you've got to work from home. She can't because even though she owns her own home, the local lords and ladies have defined, no, you cannot work from home. You're not allowed to. So even though she owns her own property, she cannot do what she wants on it. So it's not hers then, because the ownership and control is owned by somebody else. And in this case, it's owned by the elite or the state, the people who are in charge of the economy, the people who are higher up in the order, like the monarchy or whatever. That's what it is. If you try and take something off me, I'm going to defend myself. Or at least I would if we had a free society. We're not allowed to defend ourselves in the UK. If you defend yourself in the UK, you go to jail because you're not allowed to beat up the criminals. Otherwise, what you do with the police?
Someone else could do it off to me. It'll be might makes right.
Yes.
So right there, his definition of socialism is wrong. Socialism is not the state doing stuff.
Nope, I didn't say that. I said it's the state ownership. Maybe I need to clarify. Totalitarian, in the tribe or the nation state or the city state, complete utter ownership by the state. I said it's state ownership, social ownership. And as I said, Finnish socialist and others agree with me. This is the thing as well. Hitler was a socialist and he was moving towards totalitarian ownership of the means of social ownership of the means of production. He was moving towards that. He failed. I made that clear in the video, but that doesn't mean he was a capitalist. Like, Lenin tried to socialize the means of production and failed, so he had to backtrack and introduce the NEP. But at no point did Lenin must be a capitalist then because he failed. No, he failed. He's a failed socialist, and Hitler was a failed socialist too. But that doesn't mean they were capitalist. It means they were socialist. They were trying to implement socialism.
Class socialism. What the fuck's that? I thought all socialism was about class on some level. I don't. Okay, maybe I'm wrong, but I doubt it.
Well, Marxist socialist probably was, I guess, about class specifically.
Yeah, but other socialists, right? They want a classless society. If you want to get rid of class, right? If you want to have a more equal society, right? You want to get rid of private property or whatever. By that definition, you want to get rid of class, so your ideology is about class, right? If you want to get rid of the nobles, the upper lords, and make them equal to you, that's about class.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is what I just said. Yeah, it's class socialism. Right.
Anti-Semitism was his anti-capitalism, and his anti-Marxism...
No. His anti-Semitism was his anti-Jew.
Yes.
It does not connect to capitalism at all.
It does in Hitler's mind. Please listen to what I'm saying. He believes that the Jews created capitalism and that they were the capitalists. So did Karl Marx. That's the idea that Karl Marx put. He was like saying they would try and pursue the capital because they were the capitalists. That's what he was saying. And it's the same thing with Hitler. The difference is that Karl Marx was primarily a religious anti-Semite, whereas Hitler is a racial anti-Semite. That's the difference there.
Hitler and a lot of right-wingers, they get mocked for blaming everything on the Jews, right? So like a right-winger will go, oh, I love free market capitalism, and then they'll cry about the results of capitalism and say, oh, that's not true capitalism, that's capitalism that's been corrupted by the Jews.
Yeah.
Right? And then they'll turn around and blame socialism and left-wingism on the Jews as well. And they're rightly mocked as idiots. I would just like to point that out.
I'm a free market capitalist, but I don't believe in race. The idea of race is not scientific. You can type it into Google, scientific basis for race. There's plenty of searches, you can read it. No, race does not exist. It's not a genetic thing. The so-called Nazis, who are supposedly free market capitalists, yeah, they're not real Nazis, guys. They're not actual Nazis. Because if they were, they would understand that Hitler was clearly not. And this is the thing. The actual Nazis, I'm not talking about some idiotic imbecile who was like, again, the guy sat in prison who's got a swastika on his forehead. He might think, yeah, free markets. I highly doubt it. The vast majority of the ones who are actually serious about this and have actually read the stuff, they're not free marketeers, guys.
And we got Aryans, Jews liberty, Jews tyranny, group, individual. Okay.
Okay. Look, so his definition, his spectrum is completely worthless. Basically,
it's not my definition. It's the fascist third way. That's how specifically Hitler saw it. It's not actually technically how the fascists saw it, but I've lumped them in there because it was known as the fascist third way, and people associate the two. I've now defined that there's a difference between that. But the point of the matter is that this is Hitler's worldview. That's not my worldview. That's Hitler's worldview. So, and he believed that the Jews were on either side, and he was in the middle, and he believed that he was a socialist. And he wanted to implement socialism.
That's individual money, like individual, the coin sign, the dollar sign. He's saying, oh yeah, capitalism is when the individual earns his own money and has his own money. But no, under a capitalist system, you have corporations, you have winners and losers, and the winners will dominate the economic system and use that leverage to get even more money.
Yes.
That's how real capitalism works.
Corporations are not owned by individuals. They are owned collectively by their society, their shareholders. The corporations are actually public. To go public is to put your business on the stock exchange. It's to open it up to the rest of society. Corporations are not privately owned. The word corporation, corpus, body, organ of the state, body of the state, corporation, it's the idea of the state itself. It's the state within a state. That's why I.G. Farben was called the state within a state. That's why there's these giant hierarchies of society known as corporations, which are massively bigger than, let's say, the Vatican state or the there are countries that are smaller than corporations are. Corporations are body politic organs of the state. That's why Hitler wanted 13 corporations. That's why Mussolini wanted 9, I think it was. So that they could dominate society. It's easy to control the whole economy through 13 or 9 corporations than it is millions of little businesses. That's why socialists are genuinely against the small business owners and in favour of syndicates, which is another name for corporations, which is why syndicalism is on the left, corporatism is on the left. Corporates and syndicates are the same thing. It's the idea that hierarchies of trade unions like, a union is a bundle of workers, a union of workers, bundle of workers, bundle of sticks. A fascism is trade unionism. That's where it comes from. Again, I've outlined this. That's where the word comes from. And fascists wanted unions that dominated society. That's why they said corporations, because they wanted that. So it's all interlinked. It's all in the words. But no, to go public is to go onto the stock exchange, to be publicly owned by society. Corporations themselves are not privately owned. They are publicly owned. That's why they're called public corporations. That's why they go public. That's why they're owned collectively by their shareholders. It's not private control. It's not capitalism. Many capitalists mistakenly believe that it is. That's where I'm drawing the line and saying, no, they're not privately owned, therefore it's not private ownership of the means of production, it's public ownership of the means of production. We, in Britain, what do we call our local Soviets, our local councils? Soviet is council in Russian. What do we call our local councils? The corpi, the corporations. You know, we're doing it because it's part of the state. The state is a corporation in and of itself. So true capitalists like myself are anti-state and anti-corporation because we realise it's the same thing.
Oh,
I spent an hour and
public definitions.
This is when it just completely collapses. It's already completely collapsed, but this is where it gets even more stupid. And we're going to end this soon.
Yes.
Basically, because after this point, it's going to be like, yeah, there's no point going any further.
Yeah, guys, we're not going to put you through 5 hours.
versus private video, backed up by sources at the bottom of the screen and a list of sources at the beginning of the video showing the history, the etymology, and the evolution of the words socialism and capitalism.
Pause. Red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag. So he's playing semantic games right here. The etymology of words and the definition of things, how they evolve, doesn't matter. It's how these things actually function in the real world. Definitions do not change reality. Our definitions, our labels are trying to describe reality, right? And reality is complicated and like, definitions are not precise. We change definitions, they evolve because things change. We understand things better, right? So the fact that he's resorting to semantic games is a red flag. When someone does this, take it as a red flag. People who resort to semantic games are trying to one-up you and be a smart ass, go, aha, got you. And it's actually got nothing to do with the truth of the issue at hand.
To not make this video longer than it needs to be, I'm not going to repeat all that again here. What I am going to do is briefly explain the definitions, but agree with them or want
the video he's talking about is an hour and a half, by the way. So if you watch all these videos, you're using 6 hours and a half of your time. And he's basically just citing himself. He's citing himself. He wants you to look up his bullshit definition of public versus private.
Yes.
Right? Sorry. No. With all due respect, Tilk, fuck you.
A detailed explanation of these words, the link to that video will be in the description. I highly recommend that you watch that video first before you continue, especially if you disagree with the definitions I'm about to give you.
So this video, you've seen it, and it's an hour and a half long.
Yeah, I didn't watch all of it. I watched about 10 minutes, and I looked at the comments of his detractors to get the gist. I confess. Right, he's just playing the same word salad semantic games as he's playing here.
The definition of the word capitalism is the private control of the means of production. The word private comes from the Latin privus, meaning individual, as in individual human being. This is why private
Tilk, private individual. Okay, but private in the context of capitalism doesn't mean individual control because it just means non-state control, right? So a corporation is private, isn't it? Because it's not state controlled in that context. Most capitalist, and if you don't accept that as a definition of private, most capitalism is going to be public under your definition. It doesn't mean anything. You can like tear this apart and point out the contradictions to these definitions. There's just lots of them.
Capitalism is anti-state, since it gives individuals or small family-like groups control of their means of production.
Capitalism is non-state. That's the most moronic thing I've ever heard in my life, because there's private property, right? That is backed by the state. There's banking, right? That's going to be backed by the state by regulations. There's the stock market. People trading the stock market are backed by regulations. Okay, there's all the infrastructure that you have to develop to make a capitalist state work. The roads, the railway systems, right? The telecommunication infrastructure, that is often backed by the public, right? It's developed by the government. Yeah. The court system. So you can't have a capitalist system without a court system. So if we make a deal, if I made a deal with you, Trevor, in his anarcho-capitalist utopia with no state, I can make a deal with you, and I can just turn around and go, "Fuck you! I'm changing the deal. I don't have to pay you."
Yeah, exactly.
And that's it. And you would have the only recourse you'd have is like to beat me up or shoot me.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Build an army.
So, yes. This is complete nonsense. So, like I said, his definition of capitalism is plainly false and wrong.
Yeah. Well,
right?
Even in the days of monarchies, if you wanted to, let's say, open a mine or go shipping somewhere, you would need a charter from the king.
Yes.
So the powers that be, the government that be, always has its hands into things, no matter what.
Yes. So, since Tilk is not using an honest definition of capitalism, right, one that works in the real world, we can discount him completely. The rest of his video is going to be absolutely worthless, not worth watching whatsoever. I don't think we need to listen to him anymore, to be honest.
Okay.
I think what I find very interesting, because he's dishonest, he tries to frame it as, capitalism allows you to have the private means of production by small families and individuals. Tilk, be real. The vast majority of economic transactions that make money are done by corporations. Right? Amazon is not a mom and pop store, is it, Tilk? YouTube that you're on is not a mom and pop website that some individual set up, is it, Tilk? Right? Capitalism is corporatism, and we're living in the results of it right now. Computers only exist because of government research and intervention. Computers were completely unprofitable from the 40s to the 1970s. There was no private market for it, right? There was no demand, so that it was just big corporations and the government buying computers, and big corporations on its own would not have been enough. Most computer development was probably done by the military. The internet, the infrastructure of the internet, the idea, concept of the internet was created by the military. It was meant to be a computer network system that could survive a nuclear attack. It was meant to be redundant. You take out one section of it and the rest of it would still work. It was decentralized. There's many more examples I could give, Till. Right? So this is why I think you're an ANCAP. Anyone who believes in his version of capitalism, of non-state control, being the definition of it, is an ANCAP. Because it's such a nonsensical definition of it, no other group believes this.
Yes, and that's why they ridicule you. This is why you have these people just coming in saying you're dumb.
Yes.
You know?
I've literally, it's all on the screen for them, but they haven't read it. They're not listening. Capitalism is the private control of the means of production. We've got socialists saying that. The word private means individual from the Latin privus. It also means small family-like group. We know this. It is therefore anti-state, it's anti-public, and is therefore against publicly owned corporations, publicly owned central banks, or publicly owned states. And then they're going, yeah, the society that we live in right now has a bunch of publicly owned corporations, a publicly owned central banks, publicly owned states. YouTube isn't a private individual owning the means of production. They are controlling the private ownership of the means of production. I own my own microphone, my own camera, my own lighting system, my own desk, my own computer. This is my means of production. I am a capitalist because of this. YouTube is the corporation, again, publicly owned, that dominates the private control. They are the internet state within a state type thing, right? That's how I would describe them. They are a state. That's why they are controlling me. They are publicly controlling that means of production. If I say something that they do not like, they will delete the entire channel or just delete the video or whatever, however they want to react. There's loads of regulations, loads of laws, wage controls, price controls, surprisingly, just like Nazi Germany, which is interesting, and all this other stuff. It's not private ownership. We do not own our own property. At any moment, the goons of the state could burst in and take away your rights and lives. And in fact, they did this. It was called lockdown. Right? Is it free market, open society? We can do what we want, say what we want, and trade as we want? Or is it lockdown? Is it social ownership? Oh, you better do this, otherwise the police will throw you into jail and charge you lots of money for opening gyms. Is it that, or is it free market? Is it capitalism, or is it totalitarian ownership of the means of production? Because I think I know what it is. I think I've got the definitions down. If your definition, okay, here's one for you. If you think capitalism is state control of the economy, then we are living in capitalism and I'm a socialist. You want to phrase it that way? Okay, fine. Hitler wasn't therefore a socialist. He was therefore a capitalist because he owned the state, right? He was controlled by the state. If that's your definition, then okay, it's no wonder you're disagreeing with me. However, that's not the real definition. The real definition is on the screen right now. Private control of the means of production. That is what capitalism is. Socialism is social ownership or control of the means of production. Ownership and control are the same thing. If you own something, you control it. If you control it, you also own it. So this is what the definition, there's no getting around this. If the private individual is not in the ownership of his means of production, then it is not capitalism. No evidence, you've got the incorrect interpretation of the words. You've got no sources to back you up. You've got this other guy on the opposite side, fully backed up, fully sourced, fully referenced, put all the effort in. No, my emotions tell me no. Oh, the video is 5 hours long. It's just designed to waste your time. Okay, maybe what I need to do is somehow pull a miracle out of the hat and produce a video that's 10 minutes long, which somehow boils down 6 hours worth of content into 10 minutes. How I'm supposedly meant to do that? Maybe I need to speak 50 times quicker and have an absolutely amazing script. Maybe I can do that. Maybe that's something I need to work on. I'll tell you what, I will do that. I will work on that because I think there might be a way. And then I can go, okay, if you want more information, go and watch the 6 hour stuff. Because look, they've only got 12 minutes into the actual video. They went through the introduction and the premise. They barely got to the definitions. They didn't even look at the definitions of socialism. They've not gone, and as I say, I've put the timestamps and a PDF in the description. They've got no excuse not to go to the certain parts of the video that they think, okay, address the privatization issue, I'll jump to that section. I'm going to end this on this quote. It is usually futile to try to talk facts and analysis to people who are enjoying a sense of moral superiority in their ignorance. Thomas Sowell.